MSNBC contributor Steve Schmidt is a co-founder of the Lincoln Project, a former Republican strategist, and joins me now. Steve, watching last night, the last two nights, change in tone last night in an attempt to try to reach out to suburban women, but using all of the perks of the presidency. Incumbents have a big plane and can get around the country on a blue and white plane that thrills people in local communities, but never before the White House, the Secretary of State from Jerusalem from an official trip, the Rose Garden. What do you make of it?
Well, I think it's disgraceful conduct, Andrea. These are important symbols of the American state, and they belong to all of us. The White House is not a partisan residence, it's the people's residence, and it's the residence of the President of the United States, who is four things. He's the head of government, he's the head of a political party, he's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and he's the head of state, the government of the United States. And the use of state symbols to advance partisan interests the way that Trump is doing is disgraceful. Look, I think the Commandant of the Marine Corps should be prepared to resign and protest over what happened last night. We see a Marine officer escorting the President of the United States in the room for the purposes of performing a political task, the debasement of a naturalization ceremony. We see the playing of Hail to the Chief for a partisan purpose. And we see the Marine Guard swinging the door open, exactly like you see the Russian soldiers swinging the door open for Donald Trump's favorite autocrat, Vladimir Putin, when he walks down the hall in the Kremlin. It's completely inappropriate. The Secretary of State flew on a 757 at taxpayer expense to stand on the roof of the King David Hotel in Jerusalem to pander to evangelicals. This is a Secretary of State who spent about as much time in Iowa as he has traveling around the world. What we saw about Mike Pompeo last night, who has delusions and fantasies about being president himself in 2024, is that he's another type of Scott Walker candidate, essentially a Division I AA quarterback with fantasies about playing in the NFL. And frankly, he's not good enough. He lacks the charisma and star power. We saw that last night. If he was a normal politician giving a convention speech with aspirations, you'd say, hey, look, this guy doesn't have it. But we just saw another clinic of dishonesty, delusion, and fundamentally, Andrea, there's 180,000 dead Americans, and the first person we heard talk about this at all was the First Lady last night, who also told us that Donald Trump always tells us the truth. So again, this is great, the great national gaslighting that we saw continue last night.
Well, let me just ask you, though, should Democrats be alarmed at all of these advantages of the incumbency? Because despite early polling advantages for Joe Biden in battleground stakes, it is historically difficult to defeat an incumbent president.
It is historically difficult to defeat an incumbent president, number one. I suspect that there's at least a point or two of undercount for Trump voters. And Democrats, like all Americans, from my perspective, should be concerned, because I don't think the country can stand 4 more years of this. Donald Trump has put this country into a nosedive, into a spiral of precipitous decline, the likes of which we've never seen before. We've never seen a president laughed and mocked by leaders of the Western alliance. We've never seen a president of the United States regarded as a buffoon by our adversaries and allies on the world stage. We've never seen 180,000 Americans die of a pandemic that never had to happen, that could have been avoided. We've never seen the level of racial animus loosed by a president of the United States on the country. We've never seen the type of division. We've never seen the incompetence. We've never seen this level of ineptitude in the history of the country by any leader of the country. So Democrats should be alarmed. Everybody should be alarmed, because if Donald Trump were to be reelected, I think the America we're going to be living in is a very different country than the one we all grew up in.
Last night during our coverage, Chuck Todd said that a key for the president is whether or not he can increase his 44% approval rating, and that if he can get up to 46, 47, then he's got a real shot at re-election. Do you think that last night's mix of trying to soften his edges with those pre-taped pieces and also throw some red meat to supporters with, Eric Trump and Kip Bondi, do you think that those tactics could help him do that?
No, I don't think the convention has been particularly successful, Andrea, in the sense that the ratings are smaller than they were 4 years ago. They're smaller than the Democratic convention. Look, this is produced for an audience that finds OAN credible, or is someone who exists in the bubble of Fox News or Newsmax. I mean, Eric Trump is up there attacking the Bidens. Eric Trump is forbidden from running a charity because he's a crook in the city of New York. Pam Bondi was investigating Trump University in Florida. She got a $25,000. This unusual assortment of White House staffers, and by the way, it's totally inappropriate for them to be participating in this as White House staffers. Family members smearing the family of the Democratic nominees, smearing the family of the Democratic nominee. You know, the totality of this, it's a fundamental breach of decorum, of dignity, of history. And we just see the constant assaults on the qualities of probity and rectitude that you would hope to see in a president, you know, by the Trump family, who's desecrated that House, has desecrated that office for 3.5 straight years.
Steve Schmidt, putting it all out there on the table. Thank you very much. Thanks for being with us, Steve.